World War II was not only fought on land and in the skies, but also across the vast oceans that connected empires and isolated battlefronts. The naval theatre became a decisive factor in determining the course of the war, influencing supply lines, invasions, and the fate of entire nations. Yet, despite the experience and technology of the time, several catastrophic naval defeats occurred, many of which could have been avoided. These disasters were not simply the result of bad luck or overwhelming enemy strength. They often stemmed from arrogance, miscommunication, or the failure to adapt to new forms of warfare. Admirals, steeped in outdated doctrines or blinded by overconfidence, ignored intelligence warnings and underestimated enemy capabilities. The result was not only the loss of ships and sailors, but also strategic setbacks that reshaped the course of the conflict. From the Pacific to the Atlantic, from the icy waters of the Arctic to the Mediterranean, these blunders remind us how human error can sink even the mightiest fleet. The following 5 defeats: Pearl Harbor, the Battle of the Java Sea, Midway, the loss of Force Z, and the sinking of the Yamato, represent moments where better foresight could have averted disaster. The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, stands as one of history's most infamous naval surprises, but it was far from unforeseeable. The U.S. Pacific Fleet lay anchored in Hawaii, a perfect target concentrated in one location. American intelligence had already intercepted hints of Japanese intentions, yet bureaucratic hesitation and disbelief in Japan's audacity left the fleet unprepared. Admiral Husband E. Kimmel and General Walter Short were both aware of potential hostilities, but they failed to coordinate defences or distribute forces strategically. Reconnaissance was inadequate. Anti-aircraft defences were undermanned, and aircraft were parked wing to wing, making them easy targets. When the Japanese launched their aerial assault, 8 battleships were damaged or sunk. Over 400 Americans were killed, and the U.S. Navy's Pacific capability was crippled, temporarily. In hindsight, the warning signs were glaring diplomatic tensions. Reports of Japanese carriers missing from known positions, and the general predictability of attacking a fleet at harbour. Pearl Harbor became a case study in complacency, a devastating defeat that admirals should have seen coming, had they not clung to the illusion of invulnerability. Only months after Pearl Harbor, the Allied navies suffered another humiliating defeat at the Battle of the Java Sea in February 1942. The combined forces of the United States, Britain, the Netherlands, and Australia faced the advancing Japanese fleet in an attempt to defend the Dutch East Indies. Despite possessing numerical strength, the Allies lacked coordination, communication, and unified command. Admiral Carroll Dorman, leading the mixed fleet, was forced to operate with ships from 4 different nations, each with its own language, tactical system, and equipment. Intelligence on Japanese strength and movements was vague, and air support was practically non-existent. The result was a chaotic battle that lasted 7 hours, ending in disaster for the Allies. 5 cruisers and 5 destroyers were sunk, and thousands of sailors lost their lives. The Japanese suffered minimal losses. What made this defeat avoidable was the clear imbalance in preparation and the Allies' unwillingness to retreat and regroup. Had the admirals prioritized coordination and air cover over reckless aggression, they might have preserved their fleets for future engagements instead of sending them into a slaughter. The sinking of Britain's Force Z, comprising the battleship Prince of Wales and the battlecruiser Repulse, off the coast of Malaya in 1941, the fatal illustrated the fatal of Admirals of traditional naval thinking. Admiral Sir Tom Phillips, commanding the force, dismissed the importance of air support, believing that heavily armoured warships could withstand aerial attack. This outdated confidence ignored the clear evidence of the new age of naval aviation. When Japanese bombers attacked, Force C had no fighter protection, no radar, guided warning system, and no effective counter to high-altitude strikes. Within hours, both capital ships were sent to the bottom, with over 800 sailors killed. The Royal Navy had lost its pride and power in Southeast Asia before even engaging a single enemy vessel. The tragedy was preventable. Reports from previous air, sea encounters had already demonstrated the lethal potential of aircraft against ships, most notably during the attack on Taranto by the British themselves. Yet, naval leadership remained trapped in battleship era thinking. The destruction of Force Z marked the end of Britain's naval dominance in the Pacific and a lesson in the deadly cost of arrogance. If Pearl Harbor had been Japan's greatest triumph, then the Battle of Midway in June 1942 was its most catastrophic undoing. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto and his subordinates conceived an elaborate plan to lure the US Pacific Fleet into a trap and crush it. However, American cryptanalysts had already broken Japanese codes, giving Admiral Chester Nimitz precise knowledge of the attack's timing and objectives. Despite this advantage, it was Japan's misjudgment that sealed its fate. Yamamoto split his forces unnecessarily, overestimated the element of surprise, and underestimated the resilience of the American fleet. When US aircraft struck, they caught the Japanese carriers Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, vulnerable with fuel lines exposed and aircraft being rammed on deck. Within hours, 4 of Japan's most powerful carriers were destroyed. The defeat crippled Japan's naval air power and shifted the momentum of the war. Admirals should have foreseen the dangers of overcomplicated strategy and overconfidence. Midway exposed the flaw in Japan's leadership, a failure to adapt to a smarter, data-driven enemy who had already learned from its past humiliation. The Battle of the Barents Sea in December 1942 highlighted how even a minor engagement could carry major strategic consequences. The German Navy, under Admiral Rolf Karls, sent a powerful surface force to intercept an Allied convoy, bound for the Soviet Union. Despite possessing superior ships and firepower, the Germans were repelled by the convoy's small escort group. Poor coordination, bad weather, and the failure to exploit radar advantages led to a humiliating outcome. Not a single Allied merchant ship was lost, while the Germans suffered heavy damage and were forced to retreat. The defeat infuriated Hitler, who lost faith in his surface navy and ordered many ships to be scrapped. This was not a result of bad luck. It was predictable. The German Admiralty had ignored intelligence reports warning of the convoy's defences and had underestimated the power of combined Allied tactics. If the admirals had properly coordinated air, reconnaissance, and submarine support, they could have overwhelmed the convoy easily. Instead, the Barents Sea became a symbol of mismanagement and cost Germany its last chance to contest the Arctic sea lanes effectively. The Yamato, pride of the Imperial Japanese Navy, was the largest battleship ever built, a floating fortress meant to intimidate enemies and symbolize Japan's maritime might. Yet by 1945, aircraft carriers had already rendered such ships obsolete. Despite this, Japanese admirals sent the Yamato on a one-way mission during the Battle of Okinawa, ordering it to beach itself and act as a stationary gun platform. The plan was suicidal. Without air cover, the Yamato and its escorts were spotted by US reconnaissance planes and quickly attacked by waves of carrier-based bombers and torpedo planes. After taking multiple hits, the battleship exploded and sank, taking over 3 Zahosan sailors with her. This was not bravery. It was desperation. The Admirals should have known better than to send such an iconic vessel into a hopeless battle. The Yamato's destruction marked not only the end of Japan's battleship era, but also the triumph of air power over traditional naval dominance. It remains a tragic example of pride overriding reason, where leaders clung to symbols instead of strategy. The 5 naval defeats discussed: Pearl Harbor, the Java Sea, Force Z, Midway, and the Yamato share a common thread: each was avoidable, whether caused by arrogance, poor intelligence, or failure to adapt. These losses remind us that wars are not only fought with weapons but also with minds. Admirals and commanders, often products of outdated doctrines, struggled to grasp the rapidly changing nature of warfare in the 1940s. Air power, code, braking, radar, and joint coordination had transformed the seas into dynamic battlefields. Yet too many leaders acted as if they were still fighting the last war. The consequences were catastrophic. Thousands of lives lost, fleets destroyed, and empires weakened. In the end, the worst naval defeats of World War II were not simply matters of superior firepower, but failures of foresight. The Admirals should have seen them coming, and history has judged them accordingly. These lessons continue to resonate today, reminding modern naval strategists that technology and courage mean nothing without adaptability and clear-eyed leadership.